when I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Donnie and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moss?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Johnny.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's
The doctor lived next door to the janitor to the reverend and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Donnie, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Donnie, last name's Glover, in it to win it for the long haul. Baby, I hope you've been doing well. Summertime is here, and there's so many things to talk about. We've had a wonderful guest yesterday, Professor Larry Gibson. Oh, we talked about a plethora of topics, everything from Harlem to the red wave to the Senate race. I don't know if you've been watching the news, but this has become a very violent world. What happened to the love? Where is the love? We had a guest scheduled for today, but she had some technical challenges and couldn't get into the studio. So we're going to keep the ball moving. My name is Donnie Glover, publisher of BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. We started Be More News back in 2002. I've been writing for a number of publications, including the Afro, the Baltimore Times, the Final Call, the Sandtown Winchester Viewpoint. I was the editor of that newspaper since 94, so 94 to about 2001. And after writing for all of these other people and learning the business a bit, I decided to start my own website, BeMoreNews.com. At the time, let me tell you, they said the name was ghetto. Yes, they did. They said the name Be More News was ghetto. And now you look out here and you got Be More Dog, Be More Hat, Be More House, Be More everything. Everybody want to be more. So I guess we set another trend. So big ups to the ancestors. I'm the son of a funeral director, Donald E. Glover. My mother was a nurse, entrepreneur, master chef. She could cook anything under the sun. She had cookbooks for days. A studious woman, industrious and entrepreneurial. She used to make chicken on Sunday mornings. We lived over on Moreland Avenue. And on Sundays in the fall, there will be flag football games. The block was packed. And Mama said, we're going to sell some chicken. And so she fried a chicken, and I'd sell them across the park. But Dad, every Sunday, before the game, of course, he'd go to church. Perkins Square Baptist Church, West Baltimore. Now, born in West Baltimore, raised in East Baltimore, and then the other half of my childhood was spent back in West Baltimore, which gives me love for both sides of town. My first memories of East Baltimore, the brewery over there in Patterson Park. Over there was that down on Gay Street, in between Gay and Patterson Park. I remember the 1968 riots. I remember tanks coming up North Avenue. I remember National Guard being posted on our front. So when I hear today the question of whether or not to bring the National Guard to Baltimore, it just brings back memories from 50 years ago when Dr. King got killed and people went buck wild crazy. I'm the author of 2 books. One is Unapologetically Black. This is the latest book, I Am Black Wall Street. I look at the history of Black people in Oklahoma. Everybody knows a lot about Tulsa's Black Wall Street. Tulsa's Black Wall Street was the greatest demonstration of Black economic empowerment, self-empowerment in the entire country. I'm really big on economic empowerment. I was having a discussion yesterday with a young man. He was telling me about the various politicians that he likes. He told me he liked Mark Conway on the Baltimore City Council. I was like, that's nice. I told him I like Marion Barry. Let me tell you why. Because if your politics isn't translating into economic empowerment for your community, then you have nothing. And to me, I think Marion Barry was the greatest demonstration in this entire region of Black economic empowerment that we have ever seen. Wayne Carey is pretty damn good too. But Marion Barry, he set up everybody. And we just don't have that anymore. Everybody wants to be on Instagram. Everybody wants to be on television. Everybody wants to be in the latest news clip. Hey, Arnold. Now, Arnold Jolivet Daddy was all about economic empowerment. In this city, Arnold Jolivet, his daddy, and took it to him. He was a lawyer, but more than that, he was an advocate for Black business. And that's what we have to be. Mr. Jolivet, man, and personable. You know, a lot of times we've become so arrived that we've lost our connection to the community. I mentioned yesterday when talking with Professor Gibson, the importance of the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling. And Rudyard Kipling, I didn't say it yesterday, but Rudyard Kipling was a racist. One of those people who went over there into South Africa and manipulated those people and took the South Africans' gold. But he had a poem. I don't know if he wrote it because I don't know if he was that wise, but it's a beautiful poem called "If." And there's a line in there which says, it was one of my dad's favorite lines, said, "If you can walk with kings and not lose the common touch. If you can walk with kings and not lose the common touch. If you can do these things, you will be a man, my son." There's a whole bunch of stuff from there. If you can walk the unforgiving minute, and if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the world and all that's in it. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son. Everybody wants to be in the limelight, but we need to get things done. All of the millions and millions and millions of dollars that come through Baltimore City. This young man yesterday was telling me about William Donald Schaefer. He was saying William Donald Schaefer was his favorite mayor. But I reminded him William Donald Schaefer knocked down, created the highway to nowhere, knocked down all of those houses, got rid of all of those black people. William Donald Schaefer did build a harbor, but look at the harbor today. Stephanie Rawlins Blake got money from Obama to put money into Baltimore. She decided to put it downtown. Look at downtown. Downtown is dead. Invest in your people. And if black leaders don't invest in our people, then who will? Nobody should do for you what you can and should do for yourself. It's a majority black city, 63% black, 73% black and brown. Yet our community constantly gets looked over. One leader told me that Sandtown could not be helped. I said, well, I won't be supporting you. Hello? Why would I vote for somebody who's not going to support my community? Sandtown has there's this perception of Sandtown that, there's this perception that Sandtown is this monstrous place. That's Upton. That's not Sandtown. Anyway, I live in the community. There you go. Our sons on the corners won't go to the harbor. They're scared to get shot and robbed. I don't know what to make of that, Dave. This is what I do know. We invest in downtown. We should be investing in uptown. We should be investing in uptown. We should be investing in the people, where the people are. You wonder how something happens like that in Brooklyn? A lack of investment. We put the money everywhere except where it should go. And when you don't invest, it's like it's like generational curses. You kick a dog, you kick that dog's puppies, you kick the puppies, the grandpuppies, you keep kicking them. And so all that whole bloodline knows is being kicked. And that's what's happened in Baltimore. That's why you had a Freddie Gray happen. I don't mean Freddie Gray the person, but I mean Freddie Gray the condition. It's a lack of investment. Easterwood wreck. Lillian Jones wreck. Betlow wreck doing pretty good. But right in the heart of West Baltimore, you don't see a lot of investment in our recreation centers. I will give Mayor Brandon Scott credit for investing, for doing what he has done, especially with the squeegee kids. I mean, the biggest, you have a multiplicity of challenges from the media, starting with the media, starting with Fox. Fox paints a certain picture. The Afro, the Baltimore Times, the black media, WEAA. We have to counter what people like Fox are bringing. So it's like Fox to say this, and then we got to come right back and say what we have to say. But it's tiring. And our black elected officials don't know which way to go. Because once you get into office, because they always saying, Donnie, you should run for office. No, I know the game too much. I know the game too well. You're not going to get me in that rat trap. And it is a rat trap, because you get in there thinking you can make a difference. Then once you get in there, you realize you got to keep paying membership dues. And that's what makes a Marion Barry so profound, so memorable. he marched to his own drum. Dave, why don't you just come on and show? Since my guest ain't show. It's tiring because, you know, when I think of a B. Gaddy, for instance, she went out there, served people, went up in the hole. J.D. Howard, photographer extraordinaire, used to tell me how B. Gaddy would go up into the hole where it's cold, homeless people at, call them out. Daryl, Michael, Kenny, come on out. Got something hot for you. Got a blanket. Hey, Dave, I ain't going to be posting them comments. There's the link right there. Michael Randolph. Michael Randolph, here's the link. Come on in. Got to make a show this morning. Michael Randolph from Sandtown, now down in Tampa, carrying his advocacy around the country. Michael Randolph will tell you about Sandtown. People paint this picture of Sandtown. There's a perception that Sandtown is rough, is violent. It can be, but so can any other neighborhood. So can Randallstown. You know, these mass shootings are popping off everywhere. So for me, whether you're in Cecil County, whether you're in Atlanta, whether you're in Annapolis, Minnesota, LA, Chicago, New York. Look at New York. Beautiful city, big city, 8 million people. But there's a certain level, certain semblance of sanity. I'm going to make a show out of this today, some way, somehow. Let me see if I can get Miss Alice on here. You know, with technology, what can go wrong can go wrong. Good morning. How you doing, Auntie Alice? I'm doing good. Where you at? Okay. 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 I just wanted to say good morning to you. You too. Nothing new. Okay. All right. That's Auntie Alice. Her father was Senator Troy Braley. We had a recreation center. We have a recreation center at Bacon Bentlow. And it's been renamed after her father, Senator Troy Braley. That's where I got my first senatorial scholarship. And that was a man who was about service, Senator Troy Braley. At his house, you could possibly see anybody from A. Philip Randolph to Jackie Robinson. That's what I've been enlightened to. And that's a reminder of what we're missing today, the type of community where we were all working together. You don't have to live in Sandtown to bless Sandtown. We talked with Stacy Folks last week. Stacy Folks no longer lives in Sandtown, but he's forever connected to Sandtown. I think integration, if you ask me, was the biggest challenge, because once we integrated, we stopped fighting. A lot of us think the struggle is over. A lot of us think the fight is over. The fight is not over. The fight is never over, because you're black and in America, and there are those who want to thwart our growth and development. So I was having this conversation with this young man yesterday up in Mondom, and he was talking about, who he thought was a leader. All I know is if your politics don't translate into economics and economic development for your community, then you have nothing. And that's what we have quite often. I mean, you go from Lexington Market to Mondawmin, and it's an entire food desert here in West Baltimore. Not a lot of food options. And for seniors, I can only imagine it's even worse. But you got to learn how to survive. I mean, we're going into some times, it seems, where everything could go haywire. We don't know what we believe. We don't know what's going on. I don't know. It's just a hot mess out here. So we got to keep our head on a swivel. Can't watch too much news, but you got to watch the news. It's kind of like you got to watch it like this. But don't give up on our young people. Invest in our young people. It's a crying shame how much money we invest in education. Baltimore City has one of the highest expenditures for students in the entire state and nationally. I think, $16 per student? Yet, we're producing subpar products. And when you have an uneducated populace, no Fortune 500, Fortune 400 business wants to come to your city. Maybe we could take a note or two from Washington, D.C. I don't know. All I know is there's an election in May. You're going to have these people coming out here saying what they can do. One thing the young man said yesterday is that it's all about integrity. And once you lose your integrity, nobody wants to hear from you again. You can run all you want. Nobody wants to hear from you. Once you lose your name, it's gone. I don't know if that's true or not. I serve a God of second chances. But politically, that's a whole different ball of wax. And you black? Hell, they won't give a white man a second chance. Look at Ed Nars. They'll let him run a radio show. Bruce Barriano came back, but not as a lawyer. Let me ask you something. Do you believe in second chances? Do you believe in giving someone who you gave the wheel to another opportunity, another shot to deliver? And quite often, you only get one shot. Eminem has a song out, Maurice Tate's song, that you only get one shot, one opportunity to do this. And if you miss, nobody wants to hear from you again. Everybody loves a winner. That's why you have entities like the Salvation Army. I was sharing with my queen yesterday the significance of working with the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army is coming to my community. I work with them to help them get this building across the street with former William Penderhugh's building. We want to see programming, resources come to West Baltimore that have not been here in the past. So, we work behind the scenes, you work the front of the scenes, you do what the good Lord calls you to do. Do you believe in second chances, though? That's the question for today. Do you believe in second chances for leaders? And some leaders are worth it, like a Marion Barry. They give him all the chances in the world because he proved himself. What I loved about Marion Barry is Marion Barry would answer the phone. Marion Barry would answer the phone. I was trying to explain to this young man, you must not have been, he kind of didn't know the legacy of a Marion Barry. mayor for life, Washington, D.C. He had no idea of the work put in by Marion Barry. And I tell you something else. A lot of times what we know, we get from white media. What we know, we get from somebody else. It's not firsthand knowledge. It's what somebody told us. But what I know about Marion Barry is, number one, he would answer the phone for me, this young journalist. He told me to meet him somewhere, and we meet, whether it was Washington, D.C. at City Hall or at a hotel. He was a man's man. He had no problem going to, he knew all the strippers, though, I will tell you that much. We had to go to meet him one time at a strip club. That's the truth. There she go. Hey, Natasha. But that's what we need. We need real leaders with real solutions. Natasha is a reminder of our 5-point agenda at bemorenews.com. And that's the mother site for Black USA. Black business, public education, returning citizens services, affordable housing, universal access to health care. But Marion Barry, people don't know that Marion Barry got shot at City Hall in D.C. Hostage situation. And he stood up for the people. He put his life on the line. A lot of people don't know that Marion Barry hung out with the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King. A lot of people don't know that Marion Barry was a chemistry major. A lot of people don't know that before Marion Barry was a politician, he was known as the jobs man in Washington, D.C. Got a lot of people jobs. That was his claim to fame. He got people jobs in Washington, D.C. Most people in Washington, D.C. that I know say that Marion Barry got them their first summer job. Even if the job was for them to just go to school. But they got a summer job. They got a check for a summer job. That's commitment. When we were in Atlanta recently for the Black Wall Street Atlanta, we, well, let's bring in chat. What's going on, young man? Oh.
Good morning.
How you
Good
You
morning,
all right?
bro.
Good morning to you. You okay?
Hey, man, you got me early.
Oh, I know the feeling. Hey, tell me about that that boxing ring you took me to over there on Bel Air Road. You told me to meet you over at a boxing ring. Well,
Gladly.
not just a boxing ring. I can't see that, man.
That's okay, man. It's so over in Bel Air Edison on Bel Air and Erdman. I know you were talking earlier about the youth and some investing in the youth.
Well, introduce yourself.
Good morning, guys. I'm Chaplain David Lovelace. Everybody calls me Chap. I'm full-time volunteer chaplain for Baltimore City with the authority of the police department. Mind you, I'm a volunteer. Volunteer in the schools, rec centers, juvenile detention centers. And we partner with a lot of nonprofits across the city that serve our youth, serve returning citizens, anywhere there's a need. Me and the tribe show up. That's how I know Donnie. So the Agogi Project is this Greek guy, Michael John, and his wife Ori from Nigeria, and they founded a boxing mixed martial arts program. Senator McCrae last August got us a space above Safa's Pizza over in Bel Air Edison. We built a small gym up there.
Let's see. I didn't know McCrae, Senator McCrae. This is the first I've heard of this.
Yeah, he's one of our biggest advocates. It's hard to find a lot of support from the city when you're doing their job.
So let's back up.
Yep.
What caught your ear this morning on the show?
Well, I owed you a phone call anyway. My wife's been home with COVID, been taking care of her, but so I tuned in to what you're talking about. What caught my ear? Let me see, because I got.
So I see you got the harbor behind me.
Oh,
the,
yeah,
the harbor looks real pretty in your picture.
you were talking about Donald Schaefer, and in '75 he sat down and wrote a 50-year gentrification plan that's about to be a wrap. Couple years ago, Under Armour and Amazon sat down with City Hall and wrote a 60-year gentrification plan in 2015 to overlap transition power from Hopkins and Maryland to Under Armour and Amazon. And now in 2025, that kicks off official, where the next 50 years is going to be branded by those two corporations.
Okay. Slow down. What are you saying when you say gentrification?
Go down. Even, you know what? And I'm so proud of Morgan, but even go down Northeast, man, where Morgan's been getting a lot of money. And I'm proud of them. HBCU, I love it. I love them investing in the youth. But at the same time, they're also, kind of gentrifying the community. I will give them
gentrify. What do you mean gentrify?
I mean, replacing our local businesses with like Subways and Chipotle's and Starbucks. You go down Broadway, huge corridor, homeless people, and you got a Starbucks. You go down Northwood, they still kept Sonny's, greatest chicken box Northeast, but then you see like a Chipotle and some other stuff. We put new structures in place with higher rent that displaces our communities. You look at Cherry Hill right now. They're building out the banks on the waterfront to build new high-rise waterfront properties. Very expensive.
So you see the issue as being class.
Well, yes,
that poor people are being pushed out to allow room for a wealthier class of people to come in.
Absolutely.
Really?
I like to talk about Cherry Hill because you can physically see them building out new waterfront real estate that didn't exist. They're engineering it to build these new waterfront properties. You got like two new 21st century schools, shut down the old ones. You got a new rec center, really nice rec center, 18 and older. They've got all kinds of workout equipment and stuff, but none of those amenities that are being put in place are for the communities that exist there now.
So
it's for what's coming.
Right. So is it safe to say that we've missed the mark in East and West Baltimore?
I think that the change in gentrification is coming, like it or not. So for me, my perspective, I'm 45 years Baltimore, is let's be part of the problem. If we're going to gentrify, let's hire Black contractors. If we're going to put in new restaurants, let's hire Black franchise owners. If we're going to be in these communities making all these changes, let's survey the community and make sure they're part of the process, not displaced by it. So like for me with the acting, I'm doing as much acting as I can around the DMV, because when that culture comes to Baltimore, like it did LA, like it's doing in Atlanta, like it did in New York, and all these changes are coming in, and you can't get a studio apartment for less than $2,000 a month. If our communities have access to those jobs and that culture, then they won't be displaced, but they'll kind of be riding that wave of gentrification. They'll be riding it. They'll be part of it. They'll benefit from it in the least, because it's coming. Well, whether we like it or not, there's no way to get ahead of a 60-year plan by reacting to the changes we're seeing daily. You've got
Jeff, have you ever met Michael Randolph?
Good morning, Mr. Randolph.
Good morning. How's Baltimore today?
A bit violent. Chap, have you ever met Michael Randolph before?
No, I've seen him as a guest previously.
Michael Randolph, tell him who you are.
Well, I'm originally from Sandtown. I'm in Tampa right now. And what I do is work with how do you put together a strategy to end gentrification? How do you transform specifically communities like Baltimore to give opportunity for regular people to be part of the narrative? Understand gentrification doesn't have to be. Gentrification, if you do smart planning, can be eliminated. If you create opportunities that focus on building skill sets while you're developing the community, you provide the opportunity for folks to have income to stay in the community. And then, of course, you have to change the mindset. We as black people are consumers, and that's why we're so poor. We have to start teaching black individuals, especially those that's from the hood, how to invest their money. If they're
We
going to buy a pair of tennis shoes, invest that money in those tennis shoes, and then let that tennis shoe pay for it.
we are the product. You ever heard that? We're not the consumers
Yeah,
anymore. We've become the product. Let me ask
exactly.
you this, Randolph. How so I know for a fact I've seen the blueprints, I've seen things that I can speak to that I've actually witnessed. So when there's a 50 or 60-year plan to gentrify a city, community by community, step by step, blueprints and everything have been created. Like, it's one thing to plan and respond to maintain access to the money and to the jobs and things like that. But how do you get ahead of, as a people, we're not organized like the government or the system that we live in. So how do you get ahead of a 50 or 60-year plan?
Well, first of all, you have to inspire people, and you have to have a good plan. What I found, one of the best plans that's ever been created was created by Matt Smoke. It's called the Empowerment Zone. If we use that model that was created way back there during the Clinton administration, we increase the opportunity to actually transform people. What it uses what's known as a holistic approach to how we organize and mobilize communities. We look at economic development, social development, and physical development, and combine all those three strategies combined together to create the plan that we want to change the neighborhood. What we do here in West Tampa shows that. But the West Tampa plan is based on Baltimore. Baltimore has always led in terms of new ideas because, as you know, Donnie, back in the 90s, we were the test tube. We had people coming from all over the world to give ideas. What I did, I soaked up that information and said, well, can this actually work anyplace else? And that's how I ended up in Tampa and West Tampa to show that the plan can work and we can change the narrative. That gentrification can actually we can actually not do gentrification if we do smart planning. Anybody can change, especially you're dealing with your what is this group of people called the baby boomers. In order to help the baby boomers, we have to let them reimagine themselves. Anybody can change. I always tell folks, poor people are the richest people when it comes to poor people when you look around the nation. We are. We have so many opportunities here that in Africa, if they had that opportunity to make money, they would. But here in the United States, we don't because we've learned to be consumers and to be dependent. What happened if we change that narrative and we found out that we actually can hustle? We actually can provide an opportunity for our families. We can change the whole narrative because we are the luckiest people in the world. People look at us in Africa, especially my African people, they can't understand us as the United States. They say you got all these opportunities, but yet you don't try to make that narrative change at all. And that's what,
We are outnumbered, Michael Randolph. Black people are outnumbered in America. 13% of the population.
Not
In
Baltimore.
yeah,
African black people are the majority. But
yeah, but
still, despite being a majority, they get robbed of their titanium,
yeah,
of their gold, of their diamonds at home. So there are things that we as African Americans can look at Africa and point
that's
out
true.
to. They got
That's true.
robbed at home. At least we got
That's
robbed
true.
across that. We got robbed in another country. They got robbed at home.
That's true.
So
But Danny, think about this for 1 second. $1.8 trillion we bring in as a people.
and
There's
what is
no
supposed
reason
to
why we should be in this consumer if we change the narrative.
yeah, but
Now,
that's when you got but every time we try to make progress, there's always somebody dropping a bomb on us.
Hmm.
and that's true
Let me
too.
Mr. Randolph, let me share a thought with you because you mentioned the money that we have, the power that we have that we don't capture, right? So,
Now, Chad, we got to clarify this. You have two
oh,
black sons.
I do. So
So
when I say we, I'm
when you
talking
say,
about my community, talking about Baltimore.
okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah, no, I'm perceived as white. I understand that. So as far
I
well,
perceive you as human, but
thank you.
you are always helping in the community, and you family to me. Brandy, your wife is family to me. But
I
on that
appreciate
note, I was sharing with this young man. Let me just point this out because this is an excellent opportunity to go into this. The unfortunate thing about Baltimore, this is what I was trying to explain to the young man, is that Baltimore is cursed with apartheid, with segregation. Baltimore is the home of segregation and apartheid in America. Did you know that, Michael Randolph?
Yep.
In 1910, there was a mayor named J. Barry Mahou. We talked about it yesterday with Professor Gibson. J. Barry Mahou brought in this ordinance. The people in Roland Park, which was at that time the new suburban community for white people, wanted to make sure that black people could not move into their neighborhood. And so they wrote these laws, these policies, which became, codified and used around the nation. Blacks couldn't move into white neighborhoods. Whites couldn't move into black neighborhoods. Michael Randolph, you would not believe Sandtown today.
Yeah, I've been following your show, so I've been seeing it through your eyes as well as other people in terms of Sandtown. It's a total different place than where it was when we were actually out there actively trying to change the narrative. So I know it's been
Michael Randolph, we have white homeless people in Sandtown today.
and I heard about the people in your back, in your alleyway, the junkies and everything. So I've seen
Junkie is a derogatory term. The lady was an addict.
she has a name, but it's not just in Sandtown. It's out in Parkville. It's in Roland Park. It's not as prevalent. I'm not going to take away from the culture you guys deal with, but it's everywhere, and it's everywhere.
Well, they've got these drugs on the streets now. Fentanyl is one.
yeah.
They got another one that I didn't even know about called Trank. Have you ever heard of Trank?
You know, my wife works in the ER at Hopkins. I hear about all of it, man. Yeah,
Mike, they got people taking tranquilizers. They got people also mixing animal tranquilizers with fentanyl. And
Like
so,
News.
huh?
You remember Court News? You remember Court News? The animal tranquilizer we was taking back in the day? Court News. That was like the same thing.
Quaaludes. Yeah, Quaaludes.
It's like history repeats itself. But not that fentanyl, that's totally different. That's a whole new animal.
Trank is called xylazine.
Xylazine.
Yeah, xylazine.
So they're mixing xylazine with fentanyl. So instead of just having, back in the day, it was traditional, I thought, typically heroin, cocaine, crack. That was what was knocking people out, xylazine. But now it's just madness. And the young people, what do we do for our young people? So when Chad first came on, he was sharing with us about this beautiful program. What's it called? Agoji over on Bel Air Road. And what I really loved about the program, Mike, was it was people of all backgrounds, black, white, Latino, working with little black boys, mostly little black. But there was a little girl in there. There was a little girl in there. She was not playing. She was wah wah.
They Lismar. Yep.
What happened to us, man? What happened to us as a people? We've become so torn apart, man. We've been torn away from our humanity.
Well, apart's the word, right? We have all these systems of division, whether it's divisiveness in politics, race, gender, color, economics, like everything. Even when you go to church, you divided, bro. Like that little table that the pastor's talking from, everybody's supposed to have access to that table. But when religion was weaponized, the church took that table, and what they do? They put us in lines. Lines are divisive. So they took us away from that unifying key piece of humanity, and they divided us into lines and rows. And so that one person that is talking from the table, everybody's supposed to be at that table talking.
You know, Mike Randolph, he makes me think of the time when we had a community center
Yeah,
at 1114 North Mount Street,
exactly.
Old Coppin.
Exactly.
It was the center of the community.
hmm
And in 2007, that building was given away,
Yeah,
and now it's like Sarah's Hope or something, a shelter for women. But what I'm saying to you, Michael Randolph, is that here in Sandtown, we don't have a community center. We don't have a place where the community can come together. And so this building over here on Winchester and Fremont, the former William Penderhughes, the Salvation Army should have it together within about a year or so. And it will be a new hub here in West Baltimore to serve the people of West Baltimore, if we survive that long. So we have all of this investment. And so let me just ask you, should we have invested so much in the Baltimore City Inner Harbor, which is dead now? I asked that question to both of you.
Well, that's one of the other things I heard that got my ears burning when you were talking. You're talking about how the harbor was built up under a certain city hall leader or public servant. I'll tell you,
William Donald Schaefer.
well, even in later years, I'll tell you this, man. Like our guys on Pensy Ave and Lawrence, our guys on Urban and Bel Air Road, our guys on Division and Bloom, and like all these different neighborhoods that are known to be like high volume violent activity. If you look at data from the police department, but young men from these neighborhoods that live in these cultures are scared to go to the harbor because they're experiencing the same kind of violence that they do on these other corners. However, at least they're experiencing it at home and it's something they know, right? So like our young guys, like we wanted to do, we're looking at doing a evening parade in October, kind of like we do the Pensy Ave parade that Donnie puts on. We want to get them together and do a night parade at the harbor, but none of the kids are interested. They're like, no way, we're not coming to the harbor. We're gonna get shot and robbed. And I'm like, well, you want to get shot and robbed like on this corner? And they're like, yeah, but this is my home. I'm all right here. Not me.
You know what we're doing in Tampa in order to attract, especially those that are on the streets? We're using technology. We're using GPT. We're using artificial intelligence. And we're teaching the young people that with this new feature, if you learn it, it totally changed the narrative as to who can make money in the society. Artificial intelligence, GPT, blockchain, all these things are changing the narrative, and it's making the field, it's leveling the field as to people, what can we do? Again, that blockchain and what is that other thing related to blockchain? You got what's that type of coin they use? Electronic
Bitcoin.
All of that technology and that can change the narrative. We getting people off the corner to slinging drugs because they're so fascinated by this new technology. And we're teaching them that actually you can become very, very rich because now the playing field is different. Web3, that's changing the whole narrative. Technology, if we use it correctly, can change the whole narrative, combined with learning them how to invest money instead of being consumer. If you combine those two together. But if you want to understand where we are today, you have to understand intergenerational trauma and how that has affected our DNA and our psyche. There are sociologists and psychologists that are doing studies, but white America will not accept this phenomenon as to why we are like we are. Why are Black Americans the most violent people in the nation compared to Africa and those others? It's called intergenerational.
No, we not.
Oh, we know that's. I believe that we are not. I believe that that's a narrative that's perpetuated by the media.
Everybody's violent.
Actually, Guess who did the
Baltimore,
first study? The first
Baltimore
study
is
was
all
done by
love.
Jewish community to show what was the Holocaust, what did it have impact on the Jewish people. That's when black people picked it up and said, "Oh, if that had effect on you
Oh
after
my,
slavery."
no. Chad, what were you saying?
I'm saying, well, this is just my truth and my experience. I grew up in Baltimore 45 years. Baltimore's chocolate city, man. We're 60, 70% black. And I have experienced 99% of my life nothing
Now
but
you
love.
you're a white guy, but you got 2 black sons.
I do.
Okay.
And I'm just saying I don't agree with we're the most violent black culture is the most violent culture. I think that's a narrative that's perpetuated that is untrue.
But you
But the
grew up.
numbers show it. The numbers.
Mike Randolph, slow down. Now, Chap, you grew up with black people.
I did.
All your friends, many of your friends.
I agree.
So, let me ask you, who do you like for mayor? This is an election come May 14th. What kind of person?
You always ask those questions. I will tell you this.
What kind of person do you want for mayor? Do we have the? Are we sticking with Brandon?
What he already did his audition to be a BG&E consultant, didn't he? I think he's good to go. My opinion is this: I think that when Miss Dixon was in office, she did the best in that position. But I'll also tell you this: in my decades of serving in the community, and when I've really had needs, as boots on the ground, Yolanda Pulley has always come through. So no matter who I like for mayor, I'm going to back the family that showed up in need. I'm going to back the family that answers the phone. So for me, I'm Yolanda Pulley all day, man, because I know what she does. I know who she is. I know what she's done. I can speak to it and testify to it. There's other people I've liked in the past. I like Stokey, man. I've been rubbing elbows with Stokey doing cleanups in Sandtown back in the day.
What kind of mayor do we need?
I think we need someone who can say I love you to the community.
And mean it.
And yeah, not just say it, but like say I love you because
when I call you Chap and I say, hey man, they got needles on the playground and it's driving me crazy, and you show up with a team of people.
Yeah, the tribe shows up and handles it, and Yolanda's that type of person. You call her, she's going to show up.
But politics. Hold on, Michael Randolph. It's a dirty game. It's a lot of money that has to be raised. And you got to be willing to sell your soul to the devil.
Absolutely. You got to compromise your integrity. I'll tell you this. Do
you believe in second chances? Do you believe?
I'm here.
I'm here. I'm second chance. I'm second place.
I'm on my 102nd chance, man. My thousand chance.
Michael Randolph, come on, tell me something.
I believe Sheila Dixon is the best candidate because she understands the jobs. There are people that talk the talk through emotions on the outside and say what they would do when they get in the game, and then they find it's totally different. I think Sheila Dixon is prepared on day one because Baltimore has gone down so far. We need somebody from day one that understands and have a proven track record that understands how to change this narrative. If you get someone from the outside and they don't understand politics, man, it's just like the same old, like what's that guy, the new mayor is doing. Sheila Dixon is the person because she understands the job and she can do it from day one. For me, it's not about personality. It's about who can do the job quickly, fast, and in a hurry.
And let me tell you, that's what I'll testify to is that our sister Yolanda does the job without the pay. She does the job without the cameras.
Well, she's an advocate. It's a difference between a practitioner and an advocate. You can advocate all along, but a practitioner is different. A practitioner is someone that actually has done the job.
Let me tell you a story,
man. There's a lot of people with emotions and a lot of people like that, but at the end of the day, who has the skill set necessary to change the narrative? I follow you, Chad, just like I follow the sister Yolanda. I follow her as well. So I have respect for her as well. I really do. But at the end of the day, it's like we have to have somebody that's ready day one and not get into office to try to learn it in a year or two. Baltimore doesn't have that time, that luxury of that time in Baltimore. And I think Sheila Dixon does and she proved it during her administration because she borrowed from the empowerment zone. Baltimore, if y'all look back at the empowerment zone and how that changed the narrative, you'll see that Baltimore has the solution to the problem already. We have to revisit the empowerment zone, hotspot initiative, all these initiatives that went on in Baltimore, weeding seed, all of these new initiatives in Baltimore. Baltimore was the shining star during that time. So many things was learned during that particular period. In fact, the rest of the nation is looking at Baltimore in terms of that best practice. In Tampa, they're looking at Baltimore, the past Baltimore, and how Baltimore used to be, and trying to use those same strategy to bring them down south. But
No,
to that sister, she's strong. Really, she is. She's a strong sister. Your Honor, she's a very strong sister. She's very opinionated. But does that actually get us to where we need to?
No, I'm encouraged to hear you say that, because that's kind of my rhetoric, is that, like, no matter who the mayor is, I need them to do well,
Yes.
because, as you said, to your point, Baltimore is a lighthouse, man. For the for the black culture, black community. We're right next to DC. We're not the blackest community. I think Detroit's got it, but we're still a high percentage of black culture and community. Definitely rich with black culture. And what happens is if we're not doing okay, then I feel like our communities across the nation are not doing okay. So no matter who sits in that mayor's seat, I need them to do better for our community, because the whole nation is looking to us for leadership.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm encouraged to hear you say that, man, because I fully agree with that. And when it comes down to it, usually when Donnie asks for for mayor, like, when it comes down to it, it don't matter. I just need them to do the right thing when they get in that seat.
Right. You know? The thing that we're doing in Tampa, in terms of changing the narrative among poor people, is creating what's known as e-commerce and home-based businesses. And that changes the narrative, because everybody doesn't have to have a brick and mortar to start a business.
Or rely on transportation. Let me share this with you, man. So, like Donnie mentioned, my sons are black. My 19-year-old son, he's got a steady job. He's doing well. He's the middle child, but he's the one who does all the does what I say, not what I do, and he's getting his life in order, man. He's doing well. He's got money. He's got like 10 grand in the bank saved up at 19 years old. He's looking for a vehicle. He's doing all the right things. And he said, "Dad, I want to get off your insurance and kind of like be independent."
Mm-hmm.
But for a young black man that lives in Baltimore City zip codes, under the age of 24, just for the privilege to drive, just for car insurance. Now, mind you, he hasn't paid for the car note, any kind of maintenance. He hasn't paid rent. He hasn't fed his family. A 19-year-old man, just for the privilege to drive in Baltimore City, it costs $800 a month.
Mm.
And so he's on my insurance, so it's around $2 something, right? But like a lot of our students and youth in Baltimore City, their parents don't drive, so there is no signing on to your parents' account, right? So we have these little stupid programs, and they're not stupid. People are trying; they don't understand the nuances in the culture. But we have people who are like bragging, "Hey, we sponsored this kid to go to driver's ed. Great, he can get a license." But now he's illegally driving because he can't afford the insurance. So you're not completing the whole picture. So now you're doing a good thing, a token good thing with good intent, but you're setting them up for failure. And when a young black man gets pulled over driving on a suspended license, these racist judges will take their privilege to get a license for the next 10 years because the law says they can do that. If they don't and they'll get locked up. Like I did. I was in that situation. I didn't know my license had been suspended because I moved around a lot when I was younger. And when it finally caught up with me, I was actually turning my life around, trying to do the right thing. And I get pulled over for suspended license I know I had and got locked up. And, that goes in your permanent record. And same with like, if you're from Baltimore, you're familiar with the bike culture and the dirt bike boys and 12 o'clock. These guys, what happens is the culture that people don't understand, the nuances to this culture is that the rich white kids from other counties, right? There's a new model dirt bike that comes out. So they'll come down to the city because they know they can sell their dirt bikes cheap. So like $200 is a brand new dirt bike. Our kids will purchase the bike, not knowing the process, not getting the title and things like that. They just, here's $200, got me a new dirt bike. Then the rich white kids go back to the county and they report their bikes stolen because then insurance will replace it for free and they get the next new model. Insurance companies put a file a police report with the VIN number of the old bike, so when our kids do get picked up on these motorcycles, they're unjustly catching grand theft auto charges because it looks like on paper to the judge that they've stolen these motorcycles that they paid for. They just didn't know the process, right? So there's all these different ways that we oppress our young black men that they don't even get a chance to breathe from the time that they're born. They're under pressure, man. And it's all these little nuances and it's millions of nuances to millions of different little complicated things that aren't on paper, and you don't know unless you're in the culture to see it and breathe it in and feel it and smell it and hear it. And these are the things that are completely so for me, context is king. And I have my truth and my perspective, and when I speak with people like yourself and other people, like that perspective and truth can change because I'm willing to receive a different context. But when it comes to the government, it comes to court, everything's black and white. It's this or that. I'll give you another example. My sons are from Duval County, so they're from Jacksonville. CPS 2 years ago picked them up from their mother's custody because she was experiencing mental illness and addiction. They had been homeless. I didn't know this because she had alienated them from me over the last 10 years. I wasn't able to talk to my kids. I wasn't able to visit them. She kept them. And then what happened is CPS picked them up and they said, come get your kids, they're going into foster care. If you bring them back to Florida or put them in her custody, they're going into foster care. Come get these kids now. And I'm like, lady, I'm in Baltimore. It's not like I'm across town. So to fly down and get my kids, right? Now, this last week, I finally, because of COVID and stuff, I finally got a court date in Florida. And the judge told me that I'm in contempt of court because our black and white final judgment from our divorce states that the mother should have custody. No context. She didn't want to hear any context or questions or the fact that CPS told me if I give her custody, they're going to put them in foster care. She just sees that, hey, there's a final judgment says this person gets these kids, and if you don't do that, you're going to get a warrant. But so the court is trying to force me to give my children over to their abuser who mentally and physically and emotionally abused them for the last 10 years because of a piece of paper, because it's all black and white to them, and they can't legally receive the context of the situation.
You know, they just passed a law in Florida that changed that whole narrative and give fathers as much rights as do moms. Now, I do disagree with so many things that this governor has done, but I think this is one of the best things because it talks about people in your situation. That changes that now in Florida as of July the 1st, in which fathers now have just as much rights as does mother. It used to be a time the mother had all of the rights, point blank. But that has changed. You really want to look at that new law related to how that's changed the narrative, and hopefully it'll go nationwide because it's not fair the way fathers are treated. But that changes the whole narrative in terms of how a father was treated in terms of their kids. But yeah, that has been the disconnect. But like I say, this governor has done so many negative things related to black people and related to immigrants, related to anybody that's not white, has done so much to hurt us.
Well, it's interesting too because the law you're talking about it's called unwed fathers, and it's another interesting context that I talk about because we use data, the same data the government uses, to tell a story about black culture, and so we tell a story that black fathers are absent in the home. They're not, but we can tell. But they base that story on statistics because black fathers don't always get married as often as other demographics. So it looks like black fathers are not in the home on paper because they're not married. So that law is important, acknowledging unwed fathers, and I'll just make this point real quick. Like every year, there's a father-son basketball game down McCullough Homes, right? And when I tell you, it goes against the stereotype because we'll have more fathers show up from the community than there are sons, because black men in our culture in Baltimore understand the need for men to show up for the young people. And so we'll have more fathers than we have sons. So the math don't add up to the story they're telling with the data, because the data is based on people just not getting married. They just don't, like, I didn't have that piece of paper a couple of times, but I was a terrible husband. I was a great dad.
That's a study that was done to show that fathers do show up. But let me take you back in history. Prior to the welfare system being created, which actually broke up the family.
It married our women to the government. Go ahead.
Back then, there was a 80% a household with man and female. That's tracking back now. Now, 75% of households are headed by females. So the so-called welfare system broke up the family. And that's why we have the scenario that we have now, where they say, but in fact it's not fact, that fathers are not in the household, or fathers are not related to their kids. But it's false, because the study was done to show that Black fathers are really so much part of their kids. But the family was broke up by the welfare system.
Right. And that's the thing, like the system made it advantageous for us not to go on paper, because if I don't go on paper,
exactly, then
my baby mom, even though we're in the same house, she's getting extra food stamps, she's getting extra EBT cash, she's getting Medicare for the kids. So they turned it to a hustle where it was easier to not get married and get all that free stuff. And then if you then try to grind, because if you try to grind, like we talked about, like even as a young Black man in Baltimore City, you don't even have the privilege to drive unless you come up with $800 a month just for insurance. And you ain't paid. That's more than rent in some places, man. That's crazy.
I think it's a national thing, because it's just like here in Florida when it comes to
it may be, but for me, I speak from what I know, because I'm not in Tampa, and so I'll testify to what I know and what I've seen.
Right.
Absolutely. And so that's why I always base my truth and my perspective is coming out of Baltimore from the inside, because that's where I'm at.
Your conversation, because believe it or not, I've been following your show as well. A lot of time I found shows around the country, I don't say anything, I just pop in just to get a sense on what's going on in that particular city or that particular state. Unlike the past, man, we have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity now to actually go and find out what's going on around the country, to peep in and get a real. I got more knowledge about Baltimore than most people in Baltimore, only because I'm able to look at different opinions from different conversations throughout Baltimore, and that's what the internet has done. But I do want to follow back on that conversation about how the Black family was broken up because of the welfare system. When you broke up the Black family, there goes the community. So if you want to understand how the community has gone down, go back in history, look at the start of how the Black family was messed up and divided. And when you mess that up, you break up the community. If you look at the ABCT, we begin to understand, how do we get here today? It didn't happen by night. But we need to go back and honestly look at what was the steps necessary to get us here at this particular point, at this particular time. That's how we change, because now we understand, and now we can go back and begin to make those changes. Black people are the most adaptable people in the world, based on what we had to do, and we're still here. And we're still shining. A lot of groups that have gone through what we've gone through wouldn't have made it. Look at the Indians. Look how they put alcohol in their community. Look at them. But look at the African Americans, how we're making it, even though we got everything thrown against us.
Yeah, no, my people, some of my people are Native. So like I always introduce myself, I'm perceived as white, but some of my people are Native. And yeah, man, some of the highest suicide rates and some of the other, like the things we've done in that community, that at least we have people like Donnie who give Black culture a voice, right? We have people like Kathy Hughes and Marsha Jews, and we got people who speak up in the Native community. Right. They're screaming at the top of their lungs, and it's you don't even hear a whisper because of they just don't have the voice. But yeah, they've suffered many atrocities.
Now, what they did to the Indian? How did they break up the Indian? They gave
Hold on. Real quick though, can we introduce our other host here? Good morning, Miss Jews. How are you?
Morning.
Good
How are
morning,
you?
gentlemen. How's everybody? And good morning, audience.
Looking like sunshine. Thank you.
Well, you know, Donnie just rocks the boat. So no matter what you're doing, he just says, make it happen. So here I am. And I couldn't
Excellent.
be in better company. So
Thank you
good
so much.
morning,
I follow
y'all.
you as well, and I think you're a right intellectual, smart lady. And
Oh,
you know how people get high on drugs? I get high on the intellectuals when we have conversations that are really meaningful. That's what get me high. I don't need drugs to get me high. But I do want to go back really quick to the point about alcohol and how that destroyed the Indian. In America, drugs destroyed us. Same thing. They substitute for drugs, and that's what destroyed the community. When you look back at how did we get to where we are today, it's not by chance, it was by design. That's
so
how
here's a
the
question for you, though. I guess the thing that really is troublesome, and it continues forever, that white people have the ability to drop alcohol. Indians didn't have no daggone alcohol. They didn't have no bottles with no alcohol that you had to take the label off and pop the top. They didn't have all that, right? And so some white man somewhere said, this is what we're going to do because we're tired of them and we don't want them here because they don't look like us. And oh, wait a minute, we're going to go get those black people. Somebody went over there to Africa and saw some black people over there. I think we should bring them back because that's a good workforce. And so then you got all these white people sitting down and they can't understand why black people are upset because for generations
yes,
and generations
yes,
and generations, we've been abused. We were abused in our own homeland,
yes,
minding our
yes,
own
yes,
business. We had
yes,
gold, we had everything mineral in Africa, leaving
right,
us alone to do what we need to do to build our country. That's what happened. That's where we started. The Indians were here,
exactly,
minding their own business,
exactly,
out in the field, capturing and training the doggone buffalo and making their little teepees and eating properly, and they were all healthy and they were all living well. But no, we had to be taken, abused, and murdered because racist white people decided that people who had melanin in their skin could not live, could not eat, could not create their own community, could not educate, but yet they're the same ones that are laying out there in the sun trying to get black like me. I went to high school in South Bend, Indiana. Jimmy Hall, I remember for the rest of my life. His father was a doctor. Jimmy Hall would go on spring break, summer vacation, and in December during the holiday. And the first thing he would do when he would come back to holiday, run and catch up with me and put his arm out to compare his white arm that is now darker than me because he'd been laying out in the sun. Now, you hate me because I'm black. I got to live in a black neighborhood because I can't go live over on Twickenham Street. You do this, but you still want to get blacker than me. There is a very sick disturbance with these people who are racist, who have the difficulty in accepting the reality that black people, in spite of all the foolishness that you've taken us through, despite hanging us, despite burning us down, despite burning up our cities, despite all of that, we still rise.
Still I rise.
yeah.
We'd like to welcome you to the Emmy-nominated Donnie Glover Show. We have with us Chap Lovelace, Michael Randolph, Marsha Jews. Good morning, world.
Good morning.
Let me ask you, do y'all remember Portuguese? Do you remember Portuguese? The country Portuguese. Well, if you want to understand how we got here, in the 1400s, Portuguese created a book. And that book talked about Africa and how Africa was the most savage people that was in the world. That's how they was able to get slavery to be adopted. What they did in 1400 years ago now has turned the whole world against black people. I heard African nations talk about how we are the most demonized people in the world. It started back in 1400.
No, actually, Michael Randolph, it started before then, when the Moors were dominating the Iberian Peninsula, which
Yes.
included Spain and Portugal. The Moors dominated the Iberian Peninsula for some 800 years. And when they chased the last Moor out of Spain, and Isabella and Ferdinand moved into the Alhambra, that's when the game changed.
But what they did, they demonized it to make people think that black people was bad people. Not only did they make yellow people, brown people think black people was bad people, they've been so successful that black people think black people are bad. But you trace it all the way back then. And I'll
Start right there. Start right there. Start right there. Say that again. Underscore and exclamation. I want to hear it. Folks in the back may not be able to hear you on that one.
But it's so true. They was able to demonize us as a people.
Yeah.
That's why brown people don't like us. That's why yellow people don't like us. Because they was able to demonize us. That's how they had to justify slavery. And the only way you can justify slavery is to show that the people that we enslaving, they're stupid, they primitive, they BC, and all that stuff like that.
The very same people who educated all of Europe.
Exactly.
See, I think a big challenge is that we as a people don't know our history, and that's why you got to get this book, I Am Black Wall Street.
That is a good book, man. That's a good book, and I would recommend it to anybody that really wants to know the truth. Because if you don't understand history, it repeats itself.
Ooh, say it again.
Hey, look, I'll say this. It might not exactly repeat itself, but it always rhymes.
I like that. I'm going to steal that and use that.
Hey, I stole it from Mark Twain, so go ahead.
Marsha Jews, what kind of person do we need for mayor of Baltimore?
Somebody who is a visionary.
It gets quiet when he asks that question.
Somebody who is
Which vote would you say, Chap?
I said it gets real quiet every time you ask that question. Go ahead, Miss Marsha.
So somebody who's a vision. Do you want to? Can I just get? I can't even get the sentence out, boy. What? Habada. You want me to answer the question? You want to ask a different question? Because I answered the first one.
Coiffed.
I can't stand you, brother. That's a sidebar conversation he gonna have with y'all after the show is over. Anyway, we need somebody who is real serious with a vision, a visionary, somebody who actually can see what needs to be done. It's shameful that this is now, I don't even know the date anymore. This is now
July
going into
2023.
Okay, so we're in the summer now, and we have a woman who is making over $400,000 a year, who's supposed to be educating our children, and she's not. And she's still employed. Let me say it one more time in case the people in the back can't hear you. She's still employed, making $400,000 plus a year. And we have children who do not have access to the internet. We have children who do not have access to the proper books. We have children who are not being taught properly. And the majority of the children of whom I speak look like us. And she is a Black woman. The mayor is a Black man. And his responsibility is making certain that that person who is over the educational system is doing her how do you have a Black police chief, and we had to go through all these changes? We don't have any leadership there, and we have murders in the street that are happening. People don't even know that they're having groups of 200 people and they're supposed to be communicating. What is happening here? It's all going down the drain. It's not safe for your children to be walking down the street, for your grandparents to walk down the street. It's not safe. You've got people being murdered, senseless murders. How do we expect our children to even have the audacity to hope?
True. Unfortunately, that phenomenon is going on in just about every black community. Here in Tampa, for example, Hillsborough County, and the superintendent there, same thing. Black kids are not being taught in public school system.
On purpose.
It's like in the Baltimore, New York, Chicago, it's the same old. I think the public school system has failed us.
It needs to be imploded.
Yeah, that's why
homeschool. My daughter homeschools my grandson. She said, "I'm not dealing with this foolishness."
Yes.
And the people who work in this homeschool section department, they're wonderful. They sit down, they give the whole plan. She gets this big giant box from Abeka. That's the name of the organization that owns it. They send a big imprinted box with boxes, plural, with all kinds of books and workbooks and everything that you can think of. They have videos. They do live streaming classes. And then at the end of each semester, she has a representative. She has the same one that works beautifully with she and my grandson. And this person sits with them. They go through that whole notebook. They have spend several hours. That's the end of that semester. And he's fine. That boy is articulate, can think quick off the top of his head. He has a huge vocabulary. He understands it. He's a thinker. But this is because people have made an investment into this homeschooling system.
That's the key. I think you already articulated the key. And you've shown it. What can happen if you apply the right techniques?
Right.
And that's a good example. Now we need to take that model and use that throughout Baltimore and throughout the nation. I refuse to believe our kids can learn.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Mike.
I was watching 60 Minutes, and they were talking about AI. They were talking about the new technology. They were talking about training robots.
Yes.
Artificial intelligence. Yes.
And I said to myself, we can train robots.
Yes.
We can educate robots.
Yeah, Shane.
We can educate machines, but we cannot educate black boys
or girls.
I'm going to add a comment real quick on that AI. There is an AI that's had human rights assigned to them by the sovereignty of Saudi Arabia in 2012. So, like, you can't damage the AI because you're violating human rights. You can't turn them off because you're violating their human rights. It's murder. So, like, just be aware of that context as we talk about that as well.
So we're talking about a machine.
Yeah. Yes.
That they have decided
around in society.
You are functioning like that's some stuff that you see on cartoons, right?
Right.
It has now come to life.
That's like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is the world.
If you look up Sophia AI, Sophia is her name. Yep.
Well, Donnie sit down and talk to him, and he got a little thing that be talking back to him. What's that little machine that you talk to all the time? That tells you, right? He got Alexa. Alexa be answering all kinds of questions, and it's like, what are you doing? What is that? He said, "Oh, that's Alexa. She doing over there." And so he has a whole conversation with Alexa, and so that's a play on what you're talking about. And so here we are now, looking at our kids who can't get the books. The books are old. They can't get on the internet in the classroom. They can't get heat in the classroom.
Right,
they can't get air in the classroom.
Check this out, Marsh. Check this out. The AI, Sophia. So what she does is she takes money out of people's mouths. So what she does for a job, she's a public speaker and discusses the future of robotics and AI.
See.
She got the first non-human award from the UN in 2017. So she's taking awards away from people. She's taking money and jobs away from people. This is a robot. And I don't know if this is like in the future, they're going to look back on this conversation and say you're racist against robots, but just be aware of the context of what's happening in our world. And this is old news. 2017, the UN gave her an award. 2012, Saudi Arabia gave her human rights. So understand this old news,
rights.
but
And
if
ain't
you're
a
not paying
cell in
attention,
her. Human rights, and ain't a cell, no molecule, no nothing. But that's what you get.
So let me just do the setup. We have a black governor, Wes Moore. We have a black Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones. We have a black treasurer, Derek Davis. We have a black mayor, Brandon Scott. We have a black comptroller here in the city of Baltimore, Bill Henry. We have blacks in all of these prominent positions.
And
how does it translate into the empowerment of the black community? Who is speaking up for us? Who is speaking up for our businesses, for our students? I figured that at this juncture, there would be some type of task force looking at, for instance, Baltimore City Public Schools and Prince George's County Public Schools, since these are the two majority black jurisdictions. I figured that at some juncture that there would be some type of task force to look at why these two school jurisdictions are consistently at the bottom of the state, number 23 and number 24 every year. But there's been no word about it. There's another issue. We have returning citizens. African Americans are 13% of the population, yet black men alone make up 44% of the prisons. Black women are the fastest growing demographic. I'm just wondering, where is the Marion Barry?
He died, and with him went the whole ability of hope and having the ability to foresee and to plan for the future, to be a visionary. That's over. Because we have too many people who are about themselves.
You're right. No, I agree with Marcia. And I want to comment real quick before we continue conversation, going back to something Donnie mentioned at the very beginning of the show. For our youth in Baltimore City, we spend about $16,000-$17,000 per year
per student.
Do you know how much we spend incarcerating a youth per year, each individual youth? Over $220,000 per year invested in incarcerating a youth, but only $17,000 investing in their future.
But you said it right.
Shameful.
They've invested in maintaining black people staying in the prison versus being educated. And we've allowed this. And we've allowed
stats. Yep.
But we've allowed this. We've allowed this. We keep bringing people in and electing people who give less than a daggone about our community. We've got children who are going to Baltimore public schools that can barely read, barely write, barely articulate a thought.
I can't read. And real quick, I'll also comment and I'll let you guys talk. The other point, to Donnie's point, like where's the task force? Where's the people speaking up? We speak up to the organizations they point us to, like for the police. We speak up to the consent decree, Wanda Watts, the overseers, and we give all the information of all the things that are wrong, and nothing happens. We go to the school board meetings, and they survey the communities, and they say, hey, we're going to close the school. What do you think? And the community begs, please don't close this school. They collect that data, and they close the school. So we have voices in the community that do speak up. We speak up to the people we're told to speak up to, the ones who are supposed to hold City Hall and these agencies accountable. They don't do their job.
Oh, they do their job. We think they serve the people. Right. Let me tell you something. With an election coming up May 14th,
there's a different master on that.
With an election coming up May 14th, I say whoever we support for mayor, we get them to sign an agreement with the community. You know, back in 2002, I was not liked by some people because I supported a Republican, Bob Ehrlich, for governor. And in 2014, I supported Larry Hogan for governor, 2 Republicans. I will say that as a result of voting for them, I've seen more resources come to my community than I have under Democrats. Now, Baltimore is a 9-1 Democratic city. And if you ask me, I suggest a Republican mayor. And let me tell you why. To bring some checks and balances. There are no checks and balances. Everybody turns a blind eye.
Yeah, but does
Everybody
O'Malley
turns-
own any Republican mayor candidates?
Well, Bob Wallace, but he's a Democrat now. But I think he should have run as a Republican because that's what you need. Just like if Baltimore was 9-1 Republican, you would need some Democrats. When you have all Democrats, everybody's covering everybody's back. Nobody's going to buck the system. Look at Park Heights. Look at the Preakness. All of these African Americans want to go to the Preakness and wear the straw hats and the seersucker suits. But the community surrounding the Preakness, surrounding Pimlico Racetrack, Park Heights, is absolutely a war zone.
Yep. And this is up and down each street.
And look at the harbor. Y'all look at your harbor.
The war.
You got 1 block of businesses down at the harbor. Everything else, the harbor is dead.
Boarded up. But David Bramble's supposed to be changing that.
We've invested all of this money, all of this tax dollar money into the Baltimore City Inner Harbor. And you wonder why the kids are fighting. Why are the kids fighting, Marcia?
They're angry. They're just tired. They don't have hope. I think I've said this before, and I'll remember it because it's been burned into my brain. In 1994, I was with Alvin Ailey here, and we had Ailey Camp, and we did it in the summer at Morgan, and then in the fall out at UMBC. And so this was in the fall, and I was out at UMBC, and we were in the gym, and Fidelma, who was the camp director, she was doing her programming, and this little black guy, young kid, was sitting on the bleachers and by himself. Everybody else was on the floor. And I went over there and I was like, hey, baby, what's going on? You know, Fidelma's put all this together and she's really excited about it. And, you know, why are you sitting over here by yourself? And he said, oh, Miss Marcia, you always trying to make everything happy and bubbly and everything. He said, I don't even see myself living past 15. Now, this boy will be in my brain for the rest of my life. I can see him sitting on those bleachers and I hear his words. I watched his body. I watched his face. And he's not that only child who doesn't see themselves living past a certain age. That their environment, you take the little girl home a couple of weeks later, she's got on her front door, 1/3 of the door is missing from the bottom. Yeah. She goes, opens up the door. Somebody can crawl in, a dog, human beings could crawl underneath that door to get into that house. So she goes inside. I'm sitting in my car. This is over in West Baltimore, one of them alley streets, right? I'm waiting for the light to turn on because it's fall. I'm waiting for the light. I get out the car and I'm like, please turn the light on. She said, the light's not working. So the electricity was off in the house. This little girl who's between 11 and 13 is in this house in the dark in the alley street with a big hole in the bottom of the door. And finally, over an hour and some change later, her mom saunters on up. But this child is sitting in the dark by herself. If I hadn't taken her home, she would have been getting off of that bus and then by herself in there. And so we have this expectation that these kids are supposed to be doing all these things, and we want them to do this and they should be doing that. But they're living in trauma on a daily basis, internally and externally. And then we have this expectation that they're supposed to change. They're supposed to do all this stuff. And they don't even want to live, half of them. And they have said it to me. I don't see myself living past 15, Miss Marcia. Now, I'm listening to this. This is not something I'm making up and reading in a daggone book. This is a live human being child. They don't have the internet at home. They don't have a computer at home. They don't have food at home. But we're worrying about having a damn parade. We want to have a party. We want to do this. And our citizens and their families are suffering. This ain't a game.
That's deep. That's deep.
It's
But
real.
just want to touch on education again because everything is changing and the narrative is really changing. Now with ChatGPT, a child can get in front of their computer.
If
And
they
that
got a
computer-
computer, if they have a computer,
Actually, if they got a smartphone,
They don't even have that.
even if they got a smartphone,
They
that's
don't
how
have that.
then we
They
can-
don't have that.
Bar that, we in trouble. But if they did, that ChatGPT will be able to plan for that child. It would ask that child certain questions, just like a teacher would. It will plan out a path towards how that child will be successful. Let me tell you why that's important. Because public school system are not helping us. That artificial intelligence is going to change the whole narrative when it comes to even the playing field, especially in African American community. Schools are beginning to use it already as a backup.
then we're in a world of trouble.
Yeah, look, I feel like this, and I wanted to comment on it earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt Miss Marsha. When it comes to education, I'm perceived as white, but I've researched my history. I know where I come from. I know the different cultures that led to me in this moment, and all the cultures that are my ancestors. When we educated our youth in the past, prior to industrialization and this school system we have now, this babysitting system we have now, our community of adults or all the adults in a community would pour into each young person in their community as an individual. So let's think of like a tribal mentality, and you have your community elders. They would take each child and build a relationship with each child. They'd pour into the child and they'd draw out the child. They'd empower the child, right? Like, I wouldn't tell a child in an older culture, I wouldn't tell them what to believe or what to think. I teach them to trust themselves and how to discover who they are from their experience. And what that looked like, there's all ways to unpack this, but what it looked like as far as speaking towards our education system now, it was like 40 or 50 adults in a community, all focused on each child one at a time. And then when we went to World War and we needed a babysitter while our women went to work, we created the school system where now it's boiled down to one adult teaching 40, we flipped it, teaching 40 kids. And so instead of kids getting 40 different perspectives and 40 different life experiences with hundreds of years of experience being poured into them to help build them up into a good person or a successful person, we've got one person that has a piece of paper that says they're qualified and their opinion matters, and then they're disseminating information to 40 kids, and the kids are barely getting the information or holding on to it because they're not getting bombarded with 40 elders telling them this, right? So we've flipped the numbers to where it's led to what we're looking at now. We got high school kids that can't read, not struggle with reading, they can't read. We got really smart kids. Like I got 2 4th graders in my gym right now that Miss Blanca comes on Saturdays. They can't read, so Miss Blanca Tapawasco comes in and she tutors them, and she's getting them to, hopefully they're in 4th grade. They don't even read at a kindergarten level yet. Her intent is by the time they get to next semester, they're at least at a 2nd or 3rd grade level where they're not completely lost. And it's because you have one person giving one perspective or one perspective, teaching out of one book, a subject, instead of like Donnie telling you his truth about Baltimore and Marsha telling you hers and Michael telling you hers and me telling you mine. Now you've got 4 pieces of Baltimore history you can put together and have a better perspective, a bigger picture of what's going on in your culture.
Okay, so let's get to some solutions as we want to wrap this up. We've been talking about everything from AI to miseducation to a Baltimore City public schools. CEO that makes $400,000 a year. We've been talking about a litany, a plethora, a cornucopia of Black elected officials from the federal, state, and local level. We've been talking about a lack of investment in the communities, a heavy investment in a downtown that has not had a return on its investment, and Inner Harbor that is devoid of business. I haven't even gone into how this city chases businesses away, Black and white. This city is horrible. This city is very anti-business. I mean, I think of West Side redevelopment. There was a flower shop. There was Ecuador hat shop down on Utah Street. And they said they were going to redevelop, and these businesses got closed down. And now the big topic is the red line. They want to bring in the red line. And I cannot jump up and down over the red line because I already know how many businesses, I already have an idea of the businesses that will get displaced. And one of you mentioned earlier about replacing the ma and pa stores with Chipotle and all of these, chain businesses. We didn't really touch too much on the food deserts. There's a food desert between Lexington Market and Mondawmin. It's a food desert. We talked about our young people being angry. Biggie Smalls comes to mind. I don't want to live no more. Sometimes I hear death knocking at the front door.
That's real.
Every day is a hustle, another day to struggle. So let's get some final thoughts. And since Michael Randolph, you all the way in Tampa, you have roots here in Sandtown. You have a lot of love. You've been an advocate since the 90s, since I met you, and probably before. We'll go with you, then we'll start with Chap, and we're going to let Marsha Jews bring it on home. But at the end of the day, we want more. We want good leaders. But I tell you, once you cross that line, people say, Donnie, you should run for office. Marsha, you should run for office. Chap, you should run for office. Michael, you should run for office. I hope you never run for office. I hope we never run, because once you cross that Rubicon, once you cross that huge river, it's like drinking Jim Jones Kool-Aid. All right, let's go, Michael Randolph.
Well, I think that if we go back to the 90s, the solution is there. I can't overemphasize the federal empowerment zone and how that changed the narrative as to how do we transform poor community. It all started with Mr. Rouse.
No, it ain't starting with no damn Mr. Rouse.
Let me hold up.
Hell no. It ain't starting with no Mr. Rouse. It started with Miss Ella. What's her name? Ella
Johnson.
Ella Johnson. It started with Margaret.
It did, but the
Margaret Ruffin. It started with George Kelson. It started. Hey, Jim Rouse don't get no whole lot of damn credit. Hey, look, Jim Rouse was trying to get into heaven. Don't you do that. Don't you do that.
Donnie, let's let me finish. All that is true, but the concept.
He's trying to get into heaven, man.
Hold up. All that, because Ella, she told me. So I can say for a fact, man, the lady's bad. But what he brought was this new concept called comprehensive, holistic approach to transform.
No, he didn't. He gave up the money for it.
Well, no, it was a partnership. Him and Kate Smoke was both responsible for that concept.
I give credit to Kurt Smoke.
Well, hold up. Out of that concept, Donnie, came the federal empowerment zone. It all started in Sandtown. Sandtown was the model, but how do you change it?
I thought the empowerment zone started on East Baltimore.
It started with various communities.
Right.
It was two in East Baltimore, historic East Baltimore, and then East Harbor, and then over here in West Baltimore, it was Sandtown, then it was Poppleton, Washington Village.
Okay.
But what was most important is the concept, a holistic comprehensive, that you have to look at economic, social development, and physical development all at the same time in terms of how do you change the community. You can't, like the hand, you can't do one finger. You have to look at a holistic approach. That thing was so powerful that it created the federal empowerment zone. It all started in Sandtown. If you go back and you look at the Jim Rouse and Mrs. Smoke, that Mayor Smoke, you'll see they created the model that the rest of the nation is using today. Baltimore has lost its way because it's gotten away from that concept. I wish my man Smoke was here on this conversation right here. He would share with me also. That was a new, innovative approach to how do you rebuild, especially poor communities. So
Now,
Baltimore actually has the plan. We just have to revisit how did it work and how do we make it work today.
well, I would say this: Baltimore has become filled with nonprofits, and these nonprofits have pimped Baltimore to no end.
I agree. I call them poor man nonprofits, and that they focus on gimme, gimme, gimme. The nonprofits I work with is called what we call social enterprise. The whole model is based upon how we move away from grants and begin to create businesses, nonprofit businesses that generate money so we don't have to depend on grants. Other than that, you got social workers as nonprofits. They gimme, 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 beg and beg and beg, instead of creating a model where they got different streams of income coming in. They call it earned income in order to sustain themselves. That's the missing piece when it comes to nonprofit. They think like a nonprofit and not like a business. Their status is a nonprofit, but they don't have to operate like a nonprofit.
But
That's
many,
what
but many of them have given people an opportunity to have access where they didn't have access before in a nonprofit environment. And there are quite a lot of nonprofits that have the capacity and the infrastructure. The key is how do we maintain and train the people who are actually managing these nonprofits. If you go in and show them how to run businesses as for profits, you'll get a lot more yield. But we don't spend time with our nonprofits and educating their management and helping them to understand what is necessary to be able to deploy the services that are required in our communities.
No, I have a perfect comment for that, Ms. Marcia. So you're absolutely right. I've had a nonprofit, kind of just figuring out on my own and asking people, how do we do this? There's a ton of nonprofits out here doing stuff out of pocket. And one thing I've discovered, so I've attached myself to the Agogi Project, which is a free boxing and mixed martial art youth program in Bel Air Edison on Bel Air and Urban. They've saved my son's life. And so I'm ride or die for these guys. And what the relationship that they've built is that they were placed in Bel Air Edison with the help of Corey McRae at our location. We've been there a year. And a foundation called, and I don't know much about them, but a foundation called Building for God stepped up, and they got connected somehow to the Agogi Project's nonprofit work. And what happens is it's a network of very wealthy or successful business owners from our perspective. And they are mentoring the founder. Coach Michael John is a founder of Agogi Project. They're mentoring him in all the things you just said, in entrepreneurship and how to raise money and how to do this and that. They're taking him under the wing and teaching him to run his nonprofit like a business.
Right.
And one of the rewards of that relationship is they said, look, do this. It's almost like a bunting fellowship, but they don't call it that. They just come and they see good work and they support. And so they told the gym, hey, look, we're going to do this big boxing event, or you want to do this big fundraising event for the boxing gym, which we're doing in 2 Saturdays on July 22nd. And Marcia, I sent you the flyer. So we have a big free to the community outdoor boxing event in Northeast Baltimore. It's a fundraiser. It's just so we can keep the lights on for the next couple of years in the space we're at, and then moving forward. And building for God has taken the coach under, like, this is a guy who just wants to fight, but he's having to learn all these other skills, right? And he's almost fighting the process, but not really. He's been doing so well. And so they said, Building for God said, if you raise $25,000 on your own doing the process we're teaching you, we will match that for your first event.
That's
and get
great.
you guys started, right? is beautiful. And it's just like you're talking about. We need more groups like that. We have the framework with Black Wall Street in Baltimore. So let's pick a nonprofit and let's take them under our wing. Let's give them everything we got so that they can be successful, get them up and rolling on to the next one, right? And that's what Mike was talking about. You know, not run around here begging for grants. And so long story short, we got this event.
You're 100% on point. 100%.
Yeah, and I'll share my experience real quick, not to get off track, but back to the point of Coach Michael Johns with his mentorship through this program. He's raised 22 out of 25,000. So we're trying to close the gap. We're leaving 3,000 on the table. So we're trying to close the gap, and we're doing some pushes to close that out. But my experience is this: when I had my nonprofit Power Fest, Hopkins was offering a $1 million grant, $250,000 per year. And we heard about it last minute. We slid and we started doing the process and grinding, and we became the lead applicant for this grant, right? But for the next 3 to 4 to 6 weeks, my full-time job, 80 hours a week, was getting stuff for the grant, doing the paperwork, getting this letter, that letter, this blah, blah, blah. Work. So what happened was I spent so much time chasing that money that I abandoned the work.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until what happened was at the end of the process or mid-process, Hopkins had never seen us coming. We weren't on their radar in the first place. I feel like they already knew who they wanted to give the money to, because our experience, my truth, is that they amended the eligibility requirements mid-process to disqualify us and anyone else who was in the lead above the person they already wanted to give the money to. And so I spent 6 weeks grinding to get this $1 million from my community and redistribute the wealth and pour into the community. And then just like a snap of the fingers, they're like, no, you're not eligible anymore. Get out of here. And then when I returned to my community, they were starving and struggling and suffering because we weren't there for them because we were chasing that money. So I'm with that. Stop chasing the grant money, because then it comes with a whole bunch of strings attached. But we have frameworks like Donnie's built up over the last 20 some years of this Black Wall Street community that, man, let's all get together. Let's sit down. Let's pick a nonprofit. Let's get them up and running and pour into them and mentor them. Because we're not just going to throw money at them. We want to make sure that they understand how to make that money work for them, right? And then on to the next one and the next one. And if Black Wall Street has their own network of nonprofits, then when the community has needs, we don't have to call in Mayor's Office of Homelessness. You don't have to call in all these other useless offices that don't do a damn thing. They can say, Mr. Terrence, the Terror Cafe can say, hey, man, go see Yolanda with People Empowered by the Struggle. She'll get you housing. Hey, go see Laquita. She'll help you get an ID and get a phone, right? We have that network built already, but let's be intentional about empowering them.
So maybe there's a directory, excuse me, Donnie, maybe there's a directory that needs to be distributed or online. And okay, I said online.
Donnie's phone's better than mine.
But to be able to have, as part of our websites, to have a section that has all of a resource location where people can access what they need, services and assistance.
Well, folks, I want to thank you for joining us today. Michael Randolph,
Thank
all the
you.
way in Tampa. Chap Lovelace, doing great work with the Agoji Project. Marsha Jews with WKIM. What does WKIM stand for?
We keep it moving.
I like it.
We
Keep
keep
it
it
moving,
moving. That's my life motto.
Thank you for a powerful discussion. We've talked about everything from holistic communities to AI to education to returning citizens to Baltimore's anti-business mentality. We've talked about the nonprofit industrial
Food deserts.
food deserts. Lord,
Right.
somebody lead us. Chap, take us on home with prayer.
Man, I'm gonna keep it real simple, y'all, and I think I speak for everyone on the screen you're looking at right now when I say Baltimore, we love you, and thank you, God, for the privilege to continue to serve and love on our city. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you all. Thank you for